If you want to hear the story of a pirate who became knighted by the Queen and was considered a hero to some and a villain to others, then you might want to tune in and hear the story of Sir Francis Drake. I'm Shark Whitebeard here at Shark's Tavern, and one of the best stories that I ever heard, and probably the greatest pirate, privateer, whatever, upstart guy who came from the bottom and worked his way up and became a hero, is the story of Sir Francis Drake. He was a young man who went out to sea and everything, and at one point, I'm just going to give you the highlights because it's a big, long story. But the highlights are that he was out there, his ship was attacked by the Spanish, he had to swim for it, almost died, got killed. So he was out looking for revenge and kind of teamed up with Queen Elizabeth at the time of England. England was not a world power yet, and Spain was. Spain was a powerful nation. They had all the wealth. They were bringing back the gold and silver from the New World that they had conquered. They were controlling the Caribbean, and England didn't really have a navy, but what they did have was some young guys who were out there, and they were considered privateers, which they had contracts or letters of marque from the Queen to go ahead and pirate Spain and some of these other countries that were hostile to England. Drake took up one of these letters of marque. He took out with the fleet of ships down to the Caribbean. And what he did was he figured that the Spanish were vulnerable on the Pacific side of the Caribbean, not right in the Caribbean side. So he took his ships and he sailed around the bottom, around the Horn, because there was no Panama Canal back then. He cut across. So he went all the way around the bottom, and it's pretty rough seas, pretty heroic navigating there. And then he plundered and attacked the ships and the colonies on the Pacific side. And he amassed enough wealth, I think, when he finally came back to England, he accumulated enough wealth for like a year's gross national product of England. What they could have earned in a year, he brought back in his ship. The Golden Hind was the ship that made it all the way there. So he was plundering and pirating ships on the Pacific side. Well, the Spanish sent their ships to intercept them and said, well, he's going to have to come back. He's going to have to come back around the Horn and come back and try to get back in England. We'll get him then. But he didn't do that. He decided that instead of going back the way he came, he was going to head back around the world. I think he was the second or third guy to circumnavigate the world in his ship, in a sailing ship. He went the other way, headed west, and just kept going back around, and came back on the other side of Africa, came back around the bottom and got back into England through the back door and outsmarted the Spanish. That was one of his things he did. And there's a lot of information on that on YouTube, and people tell the story. It's quite the story. I'm just hitting the highlights of it. And later on, the Spanish Armada, or the Spanish, kind of had enough of Drake and some of the other guys. He was knighted by the Queen when he got back, so he was Sir Francis Drake. And they're kind of tired of it, so they built a big old huge fleet of ships to go wipe out England. They were going to wipe England out. They had over 100 ships. They were going to take out the British Navy, the small British Navy that they had, and they were going to land troops and throw out Queen Elizabeth, give her the boot, and take over England. And everyone thought that England was kind of the underdog, the little guy against the big guy, and that they didn't really have a chance. There's a book I read, and they were reading the newspaper, I think in Italy or somewhere, they said, wow, the Spanish have launched their armada against England. England doesn't have a chance. And somebody said, yeah, but they're going to have to deal with Drake and Hawkins and Walter Raleigh, some of them guys, before they do anything with England, and those men are men to be reckoned with. So they launched the Spanish Armada. It's a whole long story, but the little guy against the big guy, and Drake commanded one of the ships, and some of the other, they're called the Seahawks, privateers, and they went up against the Spanish Armada and defeated them. And it was a major defeat, and it made England a world power, and they really revolutionized naval strategy and power of what would happen from then on, how they defeated them. So that was one of his exploits. He was dubbed the Dragon by the Spanish. Drake was called the Dragon, which they were Catholics, so the dragon kind of connotates the devil in the Bible. So they're basically calling him the devil. So the thing was that Drake was kind of a upstart little guy who worked his way up and was just a pain in the butt to the Spanish and people in authority, and you just kind of got to get the impression he was probably just some guy who just made his own rules, made his own laws, and did what he did. And you got to ask, he was a hero to some, and he was a villain to others. And you got to ask yourself what you think he was. And I said, well, the guy put it on the line, and he could back up what he did, and pulled off a lot of victories and stuff against insurmountable odds again and again. Eventually, I think it was bad water or something when he's out exploring, and he died of, I think of dysentery or something like that, brought on by bad water at the time. So he finally passed away out there on his ship, navigating and exploring and doing his thing. So that's kind of the story. You might want to check it out. There's a lot more detail about what this guy did, Sir Francis Drake. So please subscribe, share, like, thumbs up, and post a comment if you like stories like this. Thank you very much.